Last weekend, Indiana Jones and the Gray Circle went live for people who purchased advanced copies of the game, and this week it went live for everyone else who purchased copies of the game, and so far the reception to it has been pretty positive. You can see I have the Metacritic pulled up right here, and it has an 87 aggregate score for critics and an 8.9 out of 10 for audiences, and then when you jump over to Steam, you can even see it has a 91.94%, so just under 92% positive reviews out of 2,964. So just judging by this, it looks like the game is actually doing pretty well until you start looking at the concurrent player account they have over on Steam, and then you can see things are not going too good for it. It's only been able to reach 12,138 concurrent players. So for a game of this scale, you would probably expect it to have several 100,000 concurrent player accounts, but we're not getting that when it comes to this game, which indicates that this game is going to be a flop despite the positive reception to it. This article from Fandom Pulse is talking about this and kind of going into the details, or maybe just exploring the ideas of what could have gone wrong with this game and why it seems to be bombing, even though a lot of people who are playing it actually like the game. Indiana Jones and the Gray Circle bombs with just over 12,000 peak concurrent players. Indiana Jones and the Gray Circle never made it out of the gate, as upon release, the game has only been able to achieve 12,138 concurrent players. The game hit its all-time peak concurrent player count of 12,138 a day after it released to Steam. It's likely that number will increase throughout the week, and it's into its first weekend, but it's hard to imagine it getting over 50,000, let alone 100,000. And yes, as the weekend goes on, you're probably going to see more people playing this game, but still, being able to hit the couple 100,000 that this will probably need, it's unlikely. Maybe it's possible because of good word of mouth. Maybe there's a lot of people who weren't necessarily buying it right out of the gate because they weren't sure about it, and then the word of mouth will propel it further. So we'll have to wait and see on this, but still, I do personally doubt that it's going to gain the amount of traction that it needs in order for it to be considered a success. As a comparison, the game is pulling just above half of the interest of Dragon Age to VEILGUARD's peak when looking at Google Trends, and you have that chart right here. And something else when it comes to Dragon Age to VEILGUARD, not just Google Trends and interest, but when that game was launched, you can see after the first couple of days, it hit a peak concurrent player count of just over 89,000 players, and that game was one that's considered a colossal failure. So it's looking like if Dragon Age to VEILGUARD was a huge failure for that studio, then Indiana Jones and the Gray Circle is in kind also a huge failure. Despite performing worse than VEILGUARD, Andy Pants Gaming explains that the game is not woke. He said, "If you think about what myself and others do on these channels, we are begging companies to go back to normal ass video games. Stop pushing political agendas, just tell classic stories, stop inserting 2024 politics. And I've got to give them credit. They gave us what we've been asking for. It's not much, but it's a start. I'm not going to call the Gray Circle based, but it feels like a classic return to focus on fun and games, and there is barely a whiff of modern politics. The 25 hours that I've played, or no, not a whiff of modern politics in the 25 hours that I've played." So for people who going into this game, because I think that might be a large reason why it's not doing too well, because in the lead up to the launch of this, it was given kind of the impression, or at least there was elements to the marketing behind this that suggested that it might be pushing 2024 politics. And a lot of gamers have unanimously said in the past that they're pretty much turned off from buying games if that kind of stuff is in it. So maybe that's why this game didn't have a good launch, but I don't know, maybe with good word of mouth, that'll help actually get more people to check it out. But still, like I said, I don't think it's going to be enough to make this game a success, because a lot of these major games require having a strong launch in order to be a success. And I don't think that's going to happen when it comes to this game, even with all the positive word of mouth and a lot of people saying it's not filled with identity politics or any other things like that. So much that begs the question, why is the game not doing well? Well, there are a number of factors. Maybe the biggest factor is that the Walt Disney Company and Lucasfilm tarnished the Indiana Jones brand with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. That might be it. I don't think it's necessarily that's the case, but it's something I've said in previous videos talking about the marketing for this game, is that in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, one of the problems with that is Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character and how she was basically just trying to upstage Indiana Jones, or she did upstage Indiana Jones, and he was basically her sidekick throughout that movie. And some of the marketing for this game gave the impression that that's what we're going to be getting with this. So I think a lot of people were turned off from that, not necessarily for anything in the game specifically, just the impression that they got of the game. And that was probably informed by Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Furthermore, when Machine Games initially promoted the game, they declared that it was a game for the modern audience, and they had an employee wearing a shirt promoting disordered, degenerate behavior doing so. So yeah, you got this guy working on the game, promoting it, saying it's for modern audiences. I think at the time I was saying like that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because they could just be making an adventure game for people who didn't necessarily grow up on some of the adventure games of the past or whatever, just trying to create it in a way that people who are more akin to modern gameplay mechanics would be good with playing it. But when you use the term modern audience, that's kind of a sign that they're pushing DEI and other political based agendas like that. And I think it's kind of a bad look when a company is saying those type of words. I believe it was with Silent Hill, the remake they had of that, where they were saying it. They initially said it's for modern audiences, and then they deleted the post on that because they understand it. Like there's certain connotations to saying those particular words. So they wanted to kind of do away with that. But when it came to Machine Games promoting Indiana Jones in the Gray Circle, they did say it was for modern audiences. And I think that turned off a lot of people to it. It also showed footage of a new female lead, Gina Lombardi, kind of sending Indy. To make matters even worse, Lucasfilm Games, Greg Derrick described Lombardi as his intellectual equal. So yeah, again, kind of coming back to what people saw in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and not wanting to play a video game version of that. He said in an interview on lucasfilm.com, Gina is the perfect ally for Indy. She's endlessly curious, incredibly sharp, and has a personal stake in the journey. She not only challenges and assists the player, but also serves as an intellectual equal to Indy, bringing depth to the adventure. Now, if you just saw that prior to the release of this and you didn't like how they treated Indiana Jones in the Dial of Destiny with Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, you'd probably be hearing that from a person working on this game and thinking like, okay, they're probably just going to do another version of that. Gina adds a personal dimension to the story, making the journey about more than just finding another artifact for a museum. I believe players are really going to connect with her and root for her story, he added. Well, it seems like a lot of people who are playing the game, I wouldn't necessarily say they're rooting for her, but they don't have a problem with her character or the way she's portrayed within this game or the dynamic between her and Indiana Jones. I haven't personally played this game, but from some of the stuff I've read and some of the gameplay footage that I have watched, it doesn't look like that's the case when it comes to this game. But like I said, prior to the release of it, I could understand people getting that impression from it. And as Andy Pants Gaming notes, the game is being made by a subsidiary of Microsoft who has been pushing the woke agenda and very aggressively so throughout all of its subsidiaries such as Compulsion Games, Obsidian Entertainment, and Bethesda. He stated, I don't recommend buying this. I would play it on Game Pass for $5 or whatever so Microsoft makes as little money as possible. They are an incredibly racist company that is actively discriminating against white men right now, and that's not even hyperbole. They've actually even said that they're discriminating against white people in their hiring practices, or at least some of the high up people at their various companies have been saying as such. They have not fired avowed developer Matt Hansen, who went on Twitter and boldly proclaimed that he is refusing to hire white people due to still working at the company, and that is 100% true at this time. He also pointed to making Melissa Boone the chief of staff of Halo Studios. As noted on Microsoft's website, Boone manages research across several Xbox franchises and experiences, including Ninja Theory, Compulsion Games, Double Fine Studios, and the Xbox Store. She also leads research in diversity and inclusion and accessibility across Xbox games and experiences, with a focus on making Xbox a place where everyone has fun. So you kind of get the idea. This is just, like I said, speculating on why this game potentially failed, even though it's not pushing an agenda. But really simplistically, games didn't always push political agendas, and not every game was a hit. A lot of games that were pretty well received didn't do well at when they finally were released, and that just happens when it comes. Not every good game ends up making money. Some good games just end up failing, even if they have a positive reaction to it. This might just be an example of one of those, but I think it is just a combination of all this, where gamers have just overwhelmingly rejected anything that has a whiff of identity politics and DEI and other stuff like that. Since this game was announced and we saw trailers for it and other things like that, it did give the impression that that kind of stuff was in it. So I think a lot of people just decided to write it off and like, okay, I guess I'm not going to be playing that game after all. And I think from the player count right now, that's a response to all that sort of thing. But maybe with positive word of mouth, I think there's going to be some people out there. Actually, in fact, I've known of some people out there I've seen online who didn't really have any interest in playing this game. But then when they heard the positive reception to it, they're like, okay, maybe I'll check it out. Grums is a good example of that. Someone who was kind of spoken out against a lot of woke stuff being pushed in video games recently. He was kind of throwing up red flags when it came to this particular game, but he has since come out and said that the game's actually pretty good and it doesn't have a lot of that stuff in it. But I think if you have any video games coming out in the coming years that gives the impression that it's going to be pushing some type of identity politics, well, I think that's going to hurt the marketing for it. And it's not even necessarily the problem with the game. It's just the problem with the reaction to the game. So maybe studios would do better trying to make sure they don't make games that give that impression. And after all, or maybe just some of the marketing teams behind it or people talking about it don't use terms like it's for modern audiences or other things like that, because that could be considered some type of a virtue signal. And if you're doing that, well, then maybe people aren't going to play your game. But like I said, it could just be a combination of the impression people had from the marketing. So that's just chalked up the bad marketing. And also bad game, or sometimes good games just do badly when they're released. But let me know what you think, why this game failed, in the comment section below. Do you think it's a combination of the two? Do you think it's one more than the other? And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.